we think back to who was being talked about even the last presidential election cycle from the Democrat side. There's really nobody else who has the political base that Newsom would bring to the table for the Democrats, who's a national level name, who has doubled and tripled down on COVID, lockdowns, masks, all that stuff. And if he goes up against DeSantis, I mean, it would be a clash of the opposing political titans from the state level. We're seeing something line up here where you have only really two heavyweights at the state level representing the different party narratives here, Republican and Democrat, and this could lead to a very different showdown, if not of the presidential election coming up. Certainly, in the meantime, about whether Democrats or Republicans did a better job on the pandemic specifically. I'm talking about Gavin Newsom of California, who you pointed out yesterday could be running, and, of course, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida. People realize that state government really matters. Those two individuals, they're from a different generation, as we've discussed. Newsom will be, I mean, Ron DeSantis is actually almost 20 years or 15 years younger than Newsom, something like that. Newsom is going to be, he's in his late 50s, I think, right now, something like that.
Oh, is he? I didn't know he was that old.
Yeah, he's older. Yeah, I know. Spends a lot of time trying to look good for the cameras. DeSantis is like 42. He's
but
your age.
DeSantis is my exact age.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
DeSantis graduated from high school in 97, went to college in 01. So he just, I think, turned 43 years old.
But there's no one else. We think back to who was being talked about even the last presidential election cycle from the Democrat side. There's really nobody else who has the political base that Newsom would bring to the table for the Democrats, who's a national level name, who has doubled and tripled down on COVID, lockdowns, masks, all that stuff. And if he goes up against DeSantis, I mean, it would be a clash of the opposing political titans from the state level.
And the reason why all this is starting to happen, yesterday I said, and we had a discussion, that at some point a viable Democrat candidate has to step out and be the first person to say, I'm going to take on Joe Biden. I'm going to primary him. One way this thing plays out is Biden decides, he pulls a LBJ, says, I will not run, and then you have a wide open primary like happened with LBJ in, I guess, 68, right? LBJ just says, I can't do it. I'm not running. Even though I would be eligible for re-election, I'm out. And this was what I saw yesterday, Buck. Gavin Newsom has placed, this is according to Ad Impact Politics, which does a good job covering where political ads are being bought and whatnot. California Governor Gavin Newsom just placed, they said, a statewide cable buy in Florida with ads beginning to air on July 4th. Now, you might be sitting back if you're listening to us saying, wait a minute, why would the governor of California be buying any ads in the state of Florida? Well, one thing would be to gig and get after Donald Trump, who watches a lot of Florida television from Mar-a-Lago. Another thing would be, to your point, Buck, that we would basically have American COVID politics writ large, where Newsom, who is the biggest surviving governor, because remember, former left-wing hero Andrew Cuomo has been pulled from office or has voluntarily resigned from office as a scandal, and now we got Kathy Hochul. But the other side of this equation is you have got Ron DeSantis, who was the most successful at handling COVID of any state. And by the way, thanks to 96.3, 102.5, I'm at Panama City down in Florida. I broadcast from here a decent amount because we have a home just up the road here on the Gulf Coast of Florida that I spend a decent time on. So I spent, back in May of 2020, Buck, I brought my family down to Florida for the entire month and worked from here. And this would be an epic DeSantis versus Trump battle. DeSantis versus potentially Newsom battle. And tying this in with January 6th, which is going on right now, Democrats think in this third impeachment trial of Donald Trump, we are destroying Republicans' chances in 2024. That's what they're trying to do. They are trying desperately to destroy Republican chances in 2024. What if in attacking Trump, they're elevating other challengers who may be as strong as Trump as well in the Republican Party? You always have to be careful because, Buck, right now we got the primary, $35 million Democrats have spent to try to pick their primary opponents in Illinois, in other states. They're trying to pick primary opponents. Got to be careful when you're trying to meddle in internal politics of the other side, because sometimes you end up picking somebody who kicks your ass in an election, right? Yeah. You got to be careful.
And speaking of some of those elections that they're already putting a lot of money into to try to shape how it will all go, I'm hearing people say, you want to talk some outliers, Washington State right now.
Senate campaign.
Democrats not feeling good about it. Colorado State right now, Democrats not feeling good about some of the races that are going to be determined there. I'm even hearing people say it's not crazy to think the Oregon governor's race could get interesting.
New York Times led with that this morning about how nervous they are about what might happen in Oregon, where I don't believe a Democrat has won statewide in the governor's race since like 88.
A Republican has won statewide.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Yeah. And even some people are saying Illinois could get kind of interesting too. So now, look, we're talking long shots here. This is not like put your money on it and sleep well at night. These are pretty much long shots right now. But I do think that, for example, the New York Times with Oregon, they're trying to raise the alarm because I think there's a somnambulance on the Democrat side.
Well, look at you, somnambulance.
I mean, sometimes
wow.
Sometimes you got to throw it in there.
Yes.
And I think that people on the left are just assuming, we're going to lose, but it's going to be an off year. This could be way beyond just an off year election cycle. Clay, there could be, and when I say could, very likely will be more Republican governors of the 50 states at one time than we have seen in decades. I think it will be close to the all-time record. We could be at something like 30, 31, 32 Republican governors in the states. So, and then you add into this the shift in school board elections, which I know people think, school board election dog catcher. No, school board elections is actually really important. And some of the other state legislative races, the red wave, they think, I believe, Clay, it's going to be, we had an off year, whatever, it happens, the party in power. Whoa, this could be way beyond that.
To your point on the number of governors that could be in play, we talked about this last week. The Republicans, if they win 35 House seats, which is a very reasonable target, would have the largest number of Republicans in the House of Representatives since 1928. Let me repeat that because it's a record scratch moment, I think, for a lot of people. If Republicans win 35 seats, and I think that's a reasonable target, then Republicans would have the largest number of House seats that they have had since before the Great Depression, going all the way back to 1928, almost a 100-year high in the number of Republicans that would be in the House. To your point, Buck, almost a 100-year high in terms of the number of Republicans that would be serving as governor. And some of these Senate seats like Washington and Colorado that aren't even really on the radar, in these wave elections, you end up having some favorites who lose that nobody even thought it was possible they might lose. So I just want to start to put this on your radar screen. We talked with both Lee Yeldon and Andrew Giuliani about New York, but you got alarm bells going off in Oregon. Buck, one of the stats from the Times this morning, do you know that in the space of the last 3 years, murders in Portland have tripled? Let me repeat that because, again, it's a stat that I think a lot of people hear and they're in disbelief. Portland, in the last 3 years, has nearly tripled the number of murders that are happening in that city. And we have discussed how Seattle and Portland and, let's say, San Francisco, if you just go visit those cities, they are three of the most beautiful jewel cities that exist anywhere in the world. And Democrat policies have made them unsafe. They have made them filthy. They have ridden them with homelessness and murder and violent crime, and businesses are suffering. And in wave elections, you already saw it happen with the San Francisco School Board. You already saw it happen with Chesa Boudin on the recall with the DA. In wave elections, even in monster blue state and blue city vanguards, we can see a red wave even hitting there. And I think that's where we're headed. And I think that's where we're headed in a hurry.